Today I'm going to teach you step by step how to make this farmhouse themed welcome wreath using the Deco Mesh Poof and Curl method. Welcome to Stillwater's Wreath Designs. Come on in. Hey friends, welcome to Stillwater's Wreath Designs. Come on in. For those of you that are new here to the channel, Stillwater's Wreath Designs is all about step-by-step wreath and door spike tutorials. We've got new tutorials uploading every single week, so if you like that sort of thing, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button and join us. And for my friends who have been around on the channel for a while, thank you for coming back. I so appreciate you. I'll leave a full materials list for you below in the description of this video, so if you'd like to recreate this beauty, you can sure do so. Of course, if you would rather just purchase today's creation that we're making here, I'll also leave my Etsy link so that you can do that. We're going to be making an everyday welcome wreath today on a 15-inch wire wreath frame. If you're new to wreath making, friends, this is what's called a wire wreath frame. They come in a variety of different sizes. This is 15 inches in diameter. They come to you just like this. There's an upper level and a lower level, and they're about 2 inches apart. And there are a total of 18 ties. These are what we call ties. Go ahead and plug in your hot glue gun. The first thing we need to do is prep our sign. So I'm going to scoot this wreath frame off to the side and bring our sign in. It's just a simple welcome sign. It's 15 inches in length and probably 4 or 5 inches tall. We're going to flip this guy over to the back side and trim off this hanger. We don't need that. And we're going to attach a couple of mounting brackets to the back of our sign that we'll then use to secure our sign down into our wreath. So I'm going to peel off these stickers. I don't want that mounting bracket attached to those stickers because they'll come off eventually. If you're not familiar with mounting brackets, this is what they look like. The black side is the top and this cream color is the bottom. They're basically, I think these are 3/4 inch square. They're heavy duty plastic with points of entry all the way around. And then the back side is just some heavy 3M sticky tape. And so once you attach those to your signs or your embellishments, you can then run your pipe cleaners or zip ties or floral wire through those mounting brackets to attach them directly onto your wreath. I'm just going to put one at each end. Doesn't need to be square or straight. No one's going to see it. Give it a good hard push. And then we're going to take our glue gun and just run a stripe of glue all the way around those mounting brackets so that that glue is partially on the mounting bracket and partially on our sign. That just gives it some extra strength and stability to make sure that guy doesn't go anywhere. And now we'll keep this upside down and set our sign off to the side to dry while we prepare our wreath base. So we're going to go ahead and bring our wire wreath frame back to our workstation, and we need to move these ties around. And so the upper level set of ties, just go ahead and point those guys to the center. And then the lower level ties, we're going to point them directly outwards. So it's basically going to look like a sunshine. Once you've got all of your ties going in the right direction, your frame should look something like this. You want to also grab a standard 12-inch ruler. Today we're going to use the poof and double curl method to build out our wreath base. And so we're going to be using 2 different types of 10-inch Deco Mesh, a solid black, and then this pretty burlap that's got some white running through the center of that mesh. We're going to start with this tan. And so you want to roll out your mesh so that it's basically curl side down. And I like to roll out about 1 foot or so that I've got a good amount to work with. If you're new to working with Deco Mesh loves to fray. So anything that we can do as creators to help reduce that fray is always ideal. And the poof and curl method is great to reduce the fray because there's a limited amount of cuts on the base. And so the first thing we need to do, guys, is anchor our mesh down. We're going to be starting on the lower level set of ties. At this point, there's no top or bottom to your wreath, so you can start at any lower level set of ties. And the first thing we're going to do is take our fingers, and we'll use our thumbs to hold our mesh down, and then our 8 fingers, or in my case 7, I'm nursing an injury, scrunch and gather that mesh back into your hand until you've got this little tail just like this. And then I'm going to take that tail and tuck that back under into my hand. And what that does, friends, is reduce and eliminate that raw edge, which also eliminates the fray. And then we'll come to any set of lower level ties on our frame. We're going to open those ties into a wide V, and then we'll take that tail that we've just made and press that all the way down to the base of that V. And then we're going to give these ties a couple of super tight twists to really anchor that guy down. Just like that. And now we're going to start adding in our poofs. For the lower level, we'll be making 10-inch poofs. So you'll want to grab your ruler, place that on the most recent set of ties that we've used, identify that 10-inch mark, and guys, not looking for perfection here, no one's going to measure. Once you've identified that 10-inch mark, scrunch and gather your mesh into your hand. That makes your 10-inch poof. Jump ahead to that very next set of lower level ties and open them into a wide V. Place that pinch of mesh all the way down to the base of that V and give that guy a couple of super tight twists. Just like that. And you've just made your first 10-inch poof. We're going to add 10-inch poofs all the way around the lower level of our wreath frame, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, we've now got our 10-inch poofs added all the way around that lower level of our wreath frame, and it's time to add that last lower level poof, and we're going to follow the same method that we did all along the way. So I'm going to identify that 10-inch mark, scrunch and gather that mesh into my hand, and then I'm going to come to the set of ties where we anchored our mesh down, and I'm gently going to untwist those ties, and then we're going to place our last pinch of mesh right on top of where we anchored it down. As long as you're careful, I promise it won't go anywhere. And then take those ties and give them a couple of super duper tight twists. And so we've just finished adding all the poofs into our lower level, and now we're going to repeat that same process on the upper level. The only difference is those poofs will be 8-inch poofs. And the first thing we need to do is jump our mesh from the lower level to the upper level. And so we're going to grab our mesh into our hand and kind of pull that cleanly and tautly, and we're going to jump it to the closest set of ties on that upper level, and we're going to pull that mesh behind those set of ties, and then we're going to give those sets of ties a couple of tight twists to anchor that guy down. So as you can see, we jumped our mesh from the lower level to the upper level. There's no poof, it's just a nice clean taut jump of mesh. And now we're able to start adding poofs to the upper level. And so we're going to follow the same process as before. We're just going to make our poofs a little bit smaller. So we're going to take our ruler, place it on the most recent set of ties, identify that 8-inch mark, and again, not looking for perfection, guys. Pinch and gather that poof. Come to your very next set of ties on the upper level, and you guessed it, place that all the way down to the center of the V, all the way to the base, and give those ties a couple of tight twists. And you've just added your first upper level poof. Go ahead and finish adding your 8-inch poofs all the way around your wreath frame, and I'll meet you back here when it's time to add that last poof. All right, it's time to add our last upper level poof, so grab your ruler, place that on the most recent set of ties, come out to that 8-inch mark, scrunch and gather your mesh, give that a pinch in your fingers, and we're going to add this right on top of where we jumped our mesh up to the upper level. So I've just opened those ties into a wide V, placed my mesh all the way down to the base, and I'm giving it 2 tight twists. So now all of our poofs have been added into our wreath base, and we need to cut away the excess bit of mesh. So grab a good pair of scissors, and what I do here, friends, let me zoom in a little bit. I take my excess mesh and I put my hand between the excess mesh and that neighboring poof to kind of serve as a guide. I'm going to come up about 1.5 inches on that mesh and just trim that excess away. That'll leave you a nice tail so that it doesn't come undone. Look how cute our base is coming along. So that was our first layer of mesh, and now we're going to prep our mesh to add the second layer. You can either use your ruler and a pair of scissors to cut your curls, or you can use a rotary cutter. If you're new to wreath making, I would say that the rotary cutter and self-healing mat, which is what you see here in the background, is probably the first couple of wreath making tools that I would recommend you purchase. The self-healing mat protects your work area. You can cut directly on the mat and it's not going to harm anything. It's got measurements going in both directions. This particular mat is 36 inches by 24, but it does come in a variety of sizes. My preferred way to cut mesh is with a rotary cutter. A rotary cutter is basically like a mini pizza cutter. And so all you do, friends, is roll your mesh out and run that rotary cutter directly on that mesh, as you can see here, as I'm trimming off that edge to give it a nice clean edge. And what we're going to do at this point, friends, remember we've got 18 sets of ties on our wreath base, and we're going to put 2 curls in every single set of ties, 1 black and 1 burlap. And we want those curl pieces to be 10 inches in length. So go ahead and cut 18 pieces of the black and 18 pieces of the burlap at 10 inches in length, and I'll meet you back here. Once you've got all of your deco mesh pieces cut for the curls, go ahead and grab your wreath frame and bring it back to your workstation. You're also going to need a chip clip or a clothespin for this next part. And remember, guys, we're going to add 2 curls to every single set of ties. So it doesn't matter where you start at, because every single set of ties will get the 2 curls. And to make a curl, it's super easy. You'll grab a single piece of your deco mesh, lay that down in your work area, curl side up, and you're just going to roll that guy into a cylindrical tube. Just like that. So it's about 1 inch to 1.5 inches in diameter there in the center, and then of course it flares at each end, and then you're going to use your clip to pinch that guy in the middle to secure it and set it off to the side. And then you'll grab the second deco mesh piece color, bring that to your work area, lay it down curl side up, roll that guy into a tube as well, pinch that guy in the middle, grab that first deco mesh tube that we made, and you're just going to put one on top of the other so it kind of looks like an X, and then you're going to come to any set of ties on your wreath frame, open those set of ties into a wide V, and press that deco mesh curl X all the way down to the base, and give those ties a couple of tight twists. We've just added our first set of curls into our wreath base. Let's do one more set together and then we'll speed ahead. So you'll grab a piece of deco mesh, bring it to your work area, curl side up, and roll that guy into a cylindrical tube. Grab your clip and pinch that in the middle to secure it. Set it off to the side. Grab your second piece of deco mesh, lay that into your workstation, curl side up, and yep, you guessed it, roll that guy into a tube. Give that a pinch in the middle. Grab that first curl that we made, and you'll just make a loose X. You'll come to the next set of ties on your wreath frame and open them into a wide V. Place those 2 curls all the way down to the base of the V, and give those ties a couple of tight twists. That's all there is to it. So go ahead and add 2 curls, 1 black, and 1 burlap to every single set of ties on both the upper and the lower level of your wreath base, and I'll meet you back here. Okay guys, our base is totally full of deco mesh, and look how stinking cute this is turning out to be. So we've definitely achieved that farmhouse vibe that we're looking for. And at this point, our wreath is now about 25 inches in diameter and probably 8 inches or so in depth. And the next step is to add our sign into our wreath. So I've just grabbed 2 20 gauge floral wire stems. That's what I'll be using to anchor down my sign. You can also use pipe cleaners if you prefer. I just find that the floral wire stems are easier to push through that mesh when you've got a really full base like we do. So I'm going to take that floral wire stem, fold it in half into a loose V just to identify that center point. And I'm going to run that right through our mounting bracket, which is nice and dry now, and give it a couple of twists to keep that from sliding off. And then we'll do the exact same thing on the other end. Once you've got your floral wire stems or pipe cleaners ran through those brackets, go ahead and turn that guy back over, and we're going to place that directly in the center. Let me just take a quick pause here, friends, and tell you and just remind you that this wreath tutorial is just a recipe. Feel free to tweak it if you'd like. You could add your sign to the bottom part of your wreath, to the top part, wherever you'd like. I'm just going to add mine to the center. And so I'm going to start on one side. I'm just going to run those floral wire stems right through that mesh in between 2 sets of ties, so that I'm not having to fight those. And we're just going to do one side at a time. So once it's poked through, flip your wreath over and find those ties. And you want those ties to run around both the inner and the outer rings. So I'm just going to give my floral wire stem just a couple of tie twists here just to hold it in place. And then I'm going to flip this guy over and make sure I'm happy with that side, and I am. So now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And I'm going to flip this guy over and make sure I'm still happy with that placement, and I am. And you basically just need to make sure at this point, friends, that your sign is centered. Once you're happy with that placement, flip your wreath over one last time and give those floral wire stems 3 or 4 more tight twists. You want those at about 80% tension, so you want your sign nice and secure, but you don't want it so tight that it recedes down into your wreath. Once you've got those floral wire stems or pipe cleaners nice and secure, go ahead and trim off that excess bit. Then we'll grab our needle nose pliers, and I'm just going to pinch those ends together and curl them back into the wreath. That way, if somebody happens to pick up the wreath or grab it at this exact spot, they won't get poked. And then I just like to take my hot glue and run a little 1/2 inch bead of glue right where those stems. That'll just keep those floral wire stems or pipe cleaners from sliding around. We'll give that a couple of minutes to dry. Once your glue has had a couple of minutes to dry, go ahead and flip that guy back over. How stinking cute is this coming along, guys? All right, the next step is to add a couple of bows. So let me tell you what we'll be doing with our ribbon. I'm going to add a bow to the lower right-hand set of ties and the upper left-hand set of ties. Those bows will be identical. And once we get those added in, then we'll sprinkle some ribbon tails throughout all the remaining ties on our frame. So let's set our wreath off to the side and go ahead and make our bows. So we're going to cut our ribbon for both bows at the same time. We're actually going to start out with some 5-inch burlap. Let me just cut this edge here so that line is pretty clean. And we're going to cut 2 pieces of the 5-inch burlap at 18 inches in length. I've also got 1 roll of 2.5-inch black and cream colored stripe. We'll cut 2 strips of our 2.5-inch ribbon at 28 inches in length. We're going to cut 4 strips of this 1.5-inch wide burlap with black and white edging at 26 inches in length. And we're going to cut 2 strips of this 1.5-inch wired black and white ribbon at 24 inches in length. Now that we've got all of our ribbon strips cut, go ahead and grab 2 pipe cleaners that match one of your ribbon types and fold those into a loose V and set those guys off to the side. So we're going to take our burlap, fold it so that the back side of that burlap is facing you, and we're just going to fold that into thirds. And you basically want that burlap to overlap itself by about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, and then flip that guy over. Your burlap should be about 7.5 or so inches in length. Set that guy out of your way. Now we're going to grab 1 strip of the 2.5-inch ribbon, and we're basically going to fold this over onto itself just like this. And so you want those tails to be sticking out beyond the ribbon by about 3 inches. So once you've got your piece folded over onto itself, go ahead and press down on it so it holds its shape and lay it down in your work area. And now we're going to do the same thing with the tan ribbon. I'll fold that over onto itself. We want that ribbon to be sticking out beyond the loops by a few inches. And you want those loops to be just a little bit smaller than our previous ribbon. Go ahead and push that down. That's the great thing about wired ribbon. It'll hold its shape. Lay that on top of itself. We're going to do that again with the exact same ribbon. Lay that on top of itself and push that guy down. And now we're going to do the same thing with the black and white ribbon. Fold it over onto itself. You want those loops to be a tad smaller than the previous loops. Make sure those tails are sticking beyond your loops. And lay that on top of one another. So now I'm going to just flip that guy upside down. I'm going to grab that first ribbon stack that we created and just pinch and gather that in the middle. Hold that with my fingers. We'll do the same thing to the next set of ribbons. Pinching and gathering, placing that on top in my hand. Our next ribbon fold, pinching and gathering in the middle, placing that on top of my hand, and finally the black and white, pinching and gathering in the middle and placing that guy right on top. Now we're going to take that pipe cleaner that we folded into a V earlier, wrap that around the center, pull that in on itself as tight as we can, and give that 4 or 5 tight twists. Just like that. Once you've done that, I like to take those pipe cleaners and put them between 2 of my fingers, and I'm just going to take all of those tails and pull them down. So your bow stack should look something like this. Take those small snips or scissors and trim off the excess bit of your pipe cleaner and toss those guys away. And now we're going to place that right on top of our burlap stack. And so I'm going to place that bow right in the middle. And then I'm just going to pull the burlap up from the bottom and down from the top. And then I'm going to grab my pipe cleaner again, flip that guy over onto the back, and pull that as tightly as I can. And I'm going to give that 3 or 4 super tight twists. Just like that. So you can leave that pipe cleaner on there to anchor that guy down. I'm going to pull my tails down again. case any of them got squirrely. We're not going to fluff those loops until we put it into our wreath. You can either angle trim the ends or dovetail. I'm going to angle trim today. Now we're going to repeat that exact same process and make our second bow. Let's go ahead and set them off to the side, and we'll grab our wreath frame. You can add these 2 bows wherever you'd like, friends. I'm going to add mine to the bottom right, as I mentioned earlier, and the upper left. So we're just going to secure those down into our set of ties. I forgot to mention earlier, go ahead and trim off the excess bits of your pipe cleaners. We're just going to lay the bows right down in to the center of the V of those ties, and then we'll give them a couple of tight twists and tuck those ends back under. We're going to have to fluff this out again a little bit, guys. I'm just going to do a rough fluff because we'll come back in as the very last step. But basically, I'm just going to pop those loops back open and run my fingers over those tails to give them that cute curve or bump that I like to see on my tails. And we're going to add the second bow to the upper left. How stinking cute is that, guys? All right, so we have used 2 of our sets of ties to add in our bougie bows. So that leaves us 16 sets of ties. We're going to add 2 ribbon tails to every single set of ties. And so let me show you the ribbon I'm going to use here. I've pulled out a couple of additional ones. So we've got this black and cream striped, this black and white polka dot, and then I've just pulled back out the black and white that we used earlier, and then tan and cream check. And I'm going to alternate back and forth with my ribbon tails. So what we're going to do at this point, friends, we're going to cut 8 pieces of each of the 4 ribbon types at 10 inches in length. We'll angle trim or dovetail those ends, and then I'll meet you back here. Once you've got all of your ribbon tails cut, we're going to start adding them into our wreath. You'll also want to have your small snips handy so that we can do some trimming as we go. So every single set of ties is going to get 2 ribbon tails. Let's do one together. You're just going to take your 2 ribbon tails and lay them on top of one another into an X, and then give them a pinch and pleat in the middle, just like that. You're going to come to any set of ties on your wreath frame. I'm just going to go back and forth between my 2 patterns. You're going to add them into your set of ties by placing them all the way down to the base of that V. Then you're going to give those ties 2 or 3 super tight twists. Then you'll take your snips and trim off those excess bits of ties. I like to take my finger then and just kind of curl them back and out of the way. And so now you've got this X of ribbon tails. I'm just going to run my fingers up and over. Remember, we've used wired ribbon, so it's going to maintain that shape, and make it into a curly, curvy X, just like that. So go ahead and add 2 tails to all of the remaining sets of ties throughout your wreath. Trim off those ends with your small snips. Give a little curl to each ribbon tail with your fingers, and then I'll meet you back here. All right, we've got all of our ribbon tails added in, and look how stinking cute this beauty is coming together. We've got one more step, and that is to add a little bit of greenery. So let me show you what we'll be using. Friends, if you've been on this channel for very long, you know that this is probably one of my top 5 favorite greenery bushes. It comes from Hobby Lobby. Just a quick pro tip for you if you are newer to wreath making. You will soon discover that florals and greenery is nearly often always going to be your most expensive part of wreath making. Hobby Lobby has their florals and greenery on sale for at least 40% off every other week. So when you need to go shopping for your florals, make sure you pay attention to those sales. I like this greenery bush, friends. I've actually used it a couple of times, and as you can see, there's just a boatload left on it, and there's a lot on this bush. So let me hold it up close for you. Excuse that noise. My dog must, I don't know, be trying out for Olympics upstairs. Anyway, so this greenery, as you can see, it's got these individual fingers throughout this vine. And we're going to add one of these greenery bits to every single space on our wreath where we have the ties. And so you can just trim it right off of that vine, and this is what it looks like. They range between 2 and 3 inches in length. So I'm going to trim off 18 of these because, again, we're going to add one to every single central point where we have the ties. And then we'll get them added in. I've got my 18 bits all trimmed and ready to add in. So we'll do a couple together and then we'll speed ahead. You'll want to have your hot glue gun ready. Just another quick pro tip for you, friends. I'm not sponsored by Gorilla Glue, but it's definitely my favorite hot glue. I have found over the years that it really withstands extreme heat and cold well and doesn't come undone like so many others like to do. At any rate, you're going to take a single greenery bit and we're going to add it to every single center of the bows and the ribbon tails that we've added on both the upper and the lower level. And so you're just going to take a dollop of glue and run a bead of it right there at the very end of your greenery bit. So about a ½ inch worth. You'll come into your wreath and you're going to place that right in the center. I like to keep my scissors handy in case I need to poke those guys down in. You sure don't want to do that with your finger. And just give it a good 10-second hold. Let's do one more together and then we'll speed ahead. We'll do the bow this time because we're going to also add one greenery bit to the center of our 2 bougie bows. You can really have these greenery bits going in all different kinds of directions. If you're like me, you like a little bit of whimsy. So I've just ran that little dollop of glue on the end. I've added it right on top of those ties, which are similar to a pipe cleaner. I pushed it down real quickly with my pair of scissors. And we're going to move on to the next. So add one greenery bit to the center of each bow and all of your ribbon tails, and I'll meet you back here. And this beauty is finished. I sure hope you enjoyed creating with me today. If you did, please give this tutorial a thumbs up. It really helps my little channel to grow. Thanks for spending time with me today, friends. Happy crafting.